All right. All right, Jacob, you and me today are going to do some cool tools. Okay. When I was a kid, I used to like it when Dad got out the cool tools and started messing with them. I think that's one of the things that got my interest in working on cars was the tools.
Cool.
And so we're going to do that today. Now, you've seen some of these tools before, but we're going to put them into use. And we're going to show the proper procedure. Today's cool tools are going to be compression testing and leakage testing. Okay. Now, we know the Barracuda engine is fairly fresh. So there's nothing, I don't think we're going to learn anything huge here, but we're going to mess it up on purpose and make it so that we can show the folks what we can learn from these gauges. Okay?
Yep, our compression.
All right, so our first gauge is going to be our compression testing gauge, and we've got a Max set here. And the Max set has the different adapters, like this one here is a longer reach for things like small block Dodges. Slant sixes use these. I can't remember slant sixes use these. Whatever. This is for a Ford.
Yeah.
This is like a big block Mopar, and small block Chevys use these. Different adapters. Here's for a Honda, little bitty Honda.
That's big.
Yeah. Comes with a little repair kit in case you need it. Nice gauge. You do not need to have a kit this elaborate. Okay, this is let's call this a professional kit. This makes me no more professional than anybody who just goes down to O'Reilly Auto Parts and picks up a compression gauge, or maybe even one from Harbor Freight. The main thing we're trying to find here is we'd like the gauge to be accurate. That'd be nice, there's nothing wrong with accuracy. But what our main thing is we want to see how even each cylinder is. It gives a condition, side-by-side condition of these cylinders. We can crank the engine over and listen if a cylinder has no compression, but I can't crank the engine over and tell if it's 120 pounds and 150 pounds.
Yeah.
They sound the same to me. So that kind of thing is one of the things we're sort of looking for here. All right, so we'll use this gauge. We'll do the proper procedure and all that. And this is all over YouTube, but this is our version of it. So let's see if we can make a few pointers of things that I don't always hear when I watch the different videos. All right, so there's the compression tester. Now this is a really cool tool here. This was one of my favorite tools. Not as a kid. We didn't have one of these when I was a kid. But when I started racing, I got one of these because I thought I really needed it. I'm not sure I ever really did need it. But this is a cylinder leakage tester, okay? So this is going to screw into the cylinder just like a compression gauge. And then this goes on there, and basically you set it for 100% of air. In this case, 100 pounds. And then this one here, you're going to, when you plug this in, it's going to give a percentage of our leakage. Okay, most good engines are 5 to 10%. 5 is really hard to get. Good race engines will get to 5%, but most engines is in the 10% range. Anything under that's substandard, and you're going to start looking at maybe a rebuild. So we'll use this and take a look and see what that'll tell us. There's other diagnoses that we can do with these, but anyway, let's get started on some of this. So here's we're gonna do something here just to show what it sounds like if you have a dead cylinder and why you do not need to have a compression gauge for every single situation. All right.
All right.
So first thing you do is reach down here, pull your coil wire out of your cap, and give that spark somewhere to go. Not on the fuel system.
Yeah.
Don't do that. But set this wire somewhere so that spark has somewhere to go. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jacob, you go in there and crank the engine over.
All right.
And just listen to how this engine sounds when it's cranking. And just go ahead and do it right away, Jacob. Yep, just go ahead. Okay. So there's an engine with all 6 cylinders that have compression. I don't know what I'm looking at here because it's so bright in the sun here. I hope everything was there. All right, Jacob, come on out. All right, now I'm going to pull a spark plug out, and you'll see what it cranks like with 1 cylinder, no compression. All right?
Okay.
so we'll go ahead and pull number 6 out. All right, now that most people would look at that spark plug and say that is running rich. Well, we got this car out this morning and we fired it off and we let it idle until it was warm. So that's an indication that maybe it's idling a little rich. Doesn't mean it's jetted too rich. So you cannot go by this to tell you whether your carburetor is rich or lean, okay? Rich or lean, typically we're talking about the condition of the jets.
All right.
Or the size of the jets, not condition. All right, now go ahead and give me the camera. Now you go in there and crank it again. Now if you got a burnt valve or a burnt piston or something's catastrophically wrong with your engine, here's what it'll sound like. Okay, so clearly different sound than we now have 5 good cylinders and 1 completely no compression cylinder. You don't need a compression gauge to tell you that.
Yeah.
So now what I'm going to do is let's talk about a couple of thingies here. We're going to move the camera over to the other side and then you and I are going to do a compression test. Okay? Let's talk about the conditions the car should be in before we compression test. Because just dead cold will show us obvious things, but if we want an accurate reading, which is why we have an accurate gauge, what conditions should this engine be in before we test it? So first of all, it should be at running temperature. It should be hot, running temperature. So we've already done that. We've already run it to the point where you can't touch that radiator no more, and it's kind of hard to touch this down in here too. So that's number 1 condition. What's another condition you think we should have when we do this?
I think we should take that coil wire out so that none of these spark.
You're right. We take the coil wire out to kill the ignition system. What'd you say about the throttle now?
We open the throttle all the way up.
And why do we open it all the way up?
Because we want as much air as possible.
Yeah.
For as much pressure.
Yeah, because the carburetor does what to the air?
It leaks past. If you just leave the throttle there,
Yeah.
it just slowly leaks past and we won't get no compression.
Right, that's the reason the engine idles.
Yeah.
Because you put just a teeny bit of air and fuel in there. Okay, so we open the throttle up. That allows the cylinder to fill completely with air.
Yep.
Those are good things. The other day, you and I were talking about this, and you brought up one specifically thing that people should always remember when they're doing a compression test. Do you remember what that is?
Make sure your battery is good.
That's right. If your battery is not good,
Yeah, if your battery
this thing is
good.
not going to crank fast enough.
Yep.
And so when it doesn't crank fast enough, the pistons go up and the compression leaks past the rings, and that compression leaking past the rings doesn't show up on our gauge.
Yeah.
So that was an excellent point there that you made when we were talking about it the other day. All right, so I'm going to get this spark plug out, and then I'm going to have you pull the rest out. Now, why are we pulling all the spark plugs out?
Pulling all the spark plugs out is because we want the starter to turn the engine as fast as it can. So we can get our engine to turn as fast as it can so that the piston goes fast enough so that the air that leaks past the rings doesn't go past the rings it uses. So it can make compression so that we can read it
Right.
through our gauge.
Right. So that's that it has to do with time, and the slower the piston moves up and down, the more air can leak past the rings. So you're absolutely right. We want to get it so that it moves up and down as fast as possible. So now some engines turn a little faster than others, but these old Mopars with this this gear reduction starter in it, they what was just set this out over here out of the way. The gear reduction starter kind of turns the engine slow already. Now that gives that electric starter motor a lot of torque, and it reduces the amount of amperage needed to crank the engine over. So contrary to popular belief, these ugly sounding wah, wah, wah starters, they will start a car with a very weak battery compared to the others that have to, you know, GM does a direct drive on the motor and it takes a higher amperage to rotate that starter. So it would take a stronger battery to crank it. Now this is not normally an issue anyway. Nobody's going around cranking with weak batteries, but that's a point. Now the starter on a Slant 6, you know what other engine it fits?
Maybe a 340.
Yep. You know what other engine it fits?
273 V8.
Yeah, 273. What else does it fit?
440.
440.
426.
426.
Every engine.
It fits them all, and they would be the same starter used in the high compression 12-to-1 engines too.
Yeah.
These starters went everywhere. So now there are different years and different, you know, they did different things to make them differently. Now you go ahead and pull these spark plugs out of here.
All right. Let's go ahead and light this up. Get on. There we go.
Oh, one of the tools that I forgot to mention here, Jacob, when you're working on a car like the Barracuda that's been, you know, cleaned up and kept clean, this is one of the most important tools that you need to get. Put a fender cover on. You got one there.
Yep.
We'll put one on this side in case we got to lean on it for some reason. And I lean on cars all the time because I'm lazy. All right, now I'm going to have you, when you get all of them out but one, we're going to crank it over again so we can listen to what it sounds like. All right.
All right.
So we listened to a 6-cylinder engine that had compression on 5 cylinders. Now we're going to listen to a 6-cylinder engine that has compression on only one.
Only one. There is the number 2 spark plug.
All right, now I'm going to show you something real quick, Jacob,
All right, B.
for the folks. Okay, when you get your spark plug out, there's a good chance, see this has a little rubber piece inside there, and that helps you not break the spark plug when you take it out. Okay, so you just take your fingers and you roll it around the outside of the porcelain right here. And I've got a good bad example to show. Okay, so you rotate that around there like that, and this spark plug is not broken. Go ahead and set that next to that spark plug down there. Down there. Yep. All right, now here's a spark plug that's a good bad example. After you take your spark plug out, if you roll this around like this, look what it finds. Cracks. So this was probably damaged when it was either installed or taken out at one time. And I took this out of a 318 about 2 years ago. And the guy had a misfire on his engine, and he said, I put new plugs in it and it's still missing. And when I took it out, this is what I found. All right, so do that and that'll help you out. There you go. Should have just had you taking that out, but you see that?
Yeah.
See the crack in there?
That doesn't look good.
No, that looked not good.
Part of working on cars is how to learn how to use the tools, isn't that right, Pop?
Yep.
Well, found a coil wire. The wire of the coil. that when you guys watch this video, I'm gonna go. Do you guys? Folks. All right, Pop.
You got them all out but one, right?
Yep.
All right. All right, Jacob, you go ahead and crank it over.
Alright, then.
All right, so here's the opposite. We got 5 dead cylinders and 1 good one. Listen to how this sounds. This is a part of diagnostics, is using your ears and your senses. Go ahead, Jacob. Okay, so go ahead and pull that last one out.
Alright, then. Let's pull the slashed wiener spark plug out. Part about life as a mechanic. Using the tools. I like using the tools.
Okay, they're all out now?
Yep, they're all out.
All right. So what we do here is you open here. All right, so the adapter we're going to use, let's get this up here so we can all see it. The adapter we're going to use has to be similar to this, okay? So we take this, you see that? The biggest reason we want to have the adapter with the right length is if we put the short one in like this, and this will work, but it will alter the compression slightly. And since we're just trying to get an accurate reading, we want to make sure we put the correct one in for that reason.
Alrighty then, Poppy Woppy.
All right, so the slants, these particular slants, newer slant 6s, they don't have this hole with this cup in it. We're going to go ahead and get that cup out of the way. Okay, newer slant 6s, like I'm talking like, I believe 1977 and newer. They don't have these in there. They cast the head around the spark plug hole. That makes it easier to get this in there and figure it out. But so how this is going to work is you got to get this in there to the spark plug hole and get it at the right angle. And I can't even see this one the way the shadows are hitting it. We may have to go get a flashlight so we can see it. Did I get it? No, I didn't get it. Let me just stick my finger in there first. Okay, there it is. Okay. Okay, so get it up in there to the hole. Get the angle of it right. Turn this in there. Oh, did I get it that time? It's moving around. I'm on it. There we go. Okay, so we screw that in there. Our engine is hot. Our spark plugs are out. We take our return spring off of our throttle, and that is going to make our throttle go wide open, which it is. We make sure our coil wire is out, and we're going to put it somewhere where the spark has a place to go to. It's not good for the coil and the ignition system to just go off into la la land and not do what it needs to do.
Yeah.
Okay, then you take this, it's just like a quick disconnect on your air hose. Pull that back with your fingers, shove that together, We're all plugged in and ready to go. Now, I've read different things. Some say you want to see this gauge blip 5 times. Everybody kind of has their own idea of what they want. I run it until it stops blipping. Usually it's around 5 or 6 times. But you're going to watch this thing when I'm cranking it. You're going to watch it go, and it's going to keep on bobbing, and it's just going to slowly work its way up. When the needle stops moving, that's when you say, okay, Pop, we're done. All right? So go ahead and set that back over there. Let's move our stand over. Go ahead and pause it. Okay, so now you got your gauge, and you tell me when it stops blipping, okay?
All right.
And go ahead and show it to the folks once in a while, too.
All right.
All right, here we go. What'd we get to?
About 130 maybe.
130 pounds. Okay.
130.
Now, as small as the camshafts are in these slant 6s, to have compression at 130 pounds, that's a pretty good indicator that this engine has a very low compression.
Yeah.
That's a good indicator that you better have some fairly high vacuum advance timing if you want to get economy out of the engine, and it also is an indicator you can run some garbage gasoline in one of these slant 6s. Okay, now I'm going to get a notepad so you can write down. You go ahead and okay, so once we get our compression tested and you've got it registered, hit this button. Okay, then take this off, unscrew your hose like so, and then move to the next one. So go ahead and put that together, and I'll get us a notebook so you can write things down.
All right. Doing this. Where is the thing? Whee!
Not going?
No, I can't find the hole. It's so dumb.
If it wasn't so far, you know, a little experience helps. Hang on. I'll help you out with that one. And here's the thing that I have to do is if you go right down the middle of that hole and you want to go the same angle, see that face there? You want to go the same angle. So I want this to come out just like that. Find the middle, wiggle it around, and there it is.
Oh.
So just a little experience helps. Patience helps too.
Yeah.
Patience, my boy.
Patience.
All right. All right, I did that one for you. Now you got to do the other 4 on your own.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. You ready?
Yep.
All right, let's do some crankage. What'd we get to that time?
145.
145?
All right. So
Okay,
number two's
so I've already
145.
written down 1.
It's 130.
So now we got 145.
45.
Okay. Now go ahead and move it over to number 3.
All right. Let's take this thing out.
No, don't do it that way. Hit the button first.
Oh. Okay. Alright, now unscrew it.
That's a part of learning how to use the tools too.
Yep. Alright. I don't know if this thing's unscrewing.
Just keep turning. It'll come
There
out.
we go. Came right out.
Just be patient. It'll come out. You'll get it kind of the same angle. Now right down the middle. Then kind of wiggle it. You'll feel it kind of get to the hole. And then remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty.
Mm-hmm.
You're turning the wrong way.
What it is I can see the hole. It's just it won't go there. Put it in the middle. Find the hole.
Looks like you're there. Close to it.
Yep, it's staying straight. Looks like it's going in. Looks like I got it. Yeah, I got it. This is like one of the hardest parts of doing a compression test is trying to put it in the hole because you can't see the hole.
Yeah.
So you pull this back.
There you go. Right on. You ready?
Yep, ready. Looks about maybe 132, 133 for cylinders.
Okay, let's write it down on our paper.
All right. I'm gonna say 130. Oh, bad too. All right.
Go ahead and pull that thing out and get it in the next cylinder.
All right.
Hit the button first.
Then pull it out.
Okay, I think we got it this time. This video camera stinks.
Yep.
Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Let's try this again. What did we get?
About 127, I say.
127?
Yep.
All right.
I'll start putting in the next hole.
Yep.
Yay, I burnt myself again.
I love burning myself. Yay!
Yay! Man, I got it in there again. And it just goes right in too, and I feel it going right in.
You're getting used to using them tools.
Yep. And the more I use the tools, the more I get good at it.
Yep, the more efficient you are.
Ugh. Alright, piece of junk. Let's get your little bitty butt on here. Alright.
All right, here we go. All right, what was that one?
125.
125.
Alright. Alright.
swap it over to our last cylinder.
I like doing the work now.
Yeah, once you know how to do it, it's more fun.
Yeah. You're just sitting here like, alright, let's do this compression test, get it over with.
Yep. Well, patience helps you learn quicker too.
Yep. The more patience you have, the better you are doing it.
Yep. Good advice right there. Okay, you ready?
Yep. Alright. Just watch the
All right, what do we got?
About, I'd say 119.
119, a little bit lower, but that's okay. Now, I'll write that down.
Alright.
And now what we're going to do is we're going to put all the spark plugs back in but one. And we're going to do a quickie little test with the compression gauge so I can show you guys something that I found one time using the tool improperly. Okay? Sometimes you have to figure things out, and sometimes it takes this tool to do it just a little different. So we'll just put this over there on the desk.
Alright.
So I'm not gonna put, we ain't gonna put the spark plugs in on camera. So let's go ahead and pause this. All right, Jacob. So we got all the spark plugs back in except for number 6, and you got the compression gauge in there, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now we're going to use this compression gauge, kind of not the right way. And here comes the wind. All right, let's see here. I don't know why you turn on the camera and all of a sudden the wind shows up. Something about that. All right, now we're going to use this compression gauge a little different, and here comes the wind.
It just comes right when we start talking again.
And I'll bet you it just sounds terrible on the camera.
Never know.
I don't think it's planning on stopping.
Wow.
All right, well, let's try this. All right, well, I want to do something here that's a little different with the compression gauge, Jacob. We're kind of using it wrong, I guess, but there ain't no real wrong way to use the tool.
Yeah.
I mean, what the heck? A straight slot screwdriver is a chisel, right?
Yeah.
All right, now it might get a little windy. We might pull into the garage a little bit, and if it gets too windy. But what we're going to do is we're going to run the engine with the compression gauge so I can show you a few things and kind of explain a few things too, as far as what we do with distributors and timing. So one time I did, a friend of mine was up in New York and his Chevy van started running bad. And he took it into a shop and had it looked at, and they said, well, we're going to have to pull the engine apart and diagnose further because they couldn't find anything wrong. And so he went ahead and drove it all the way down here to Tennessee, and he asked me to take a look at it for him. So we did a compression test on it, and it had 185 pounds all the way around, basically 185 pounds. 180, 185, all the way around. Perfect. So we changed a coil, ignition coil, by swapping from one cylinder to the other. Oh, and it was number 2 cylinder. Well, when we changed the coil, number 2 cylinder was still dead. So then we went through all the work of changing the injectors around and with, to swap an injector, and sure enough, number 2 cylinder was still dead. So now we got the fuel, we have the ignition, and we've got compression. Those are the things it takes to make it run. So we, I thought, well, maybe we got an electrical issue, computer issue, something like that. But anyway, so we went ahead and did a compression test with the engine running, and it went from 185 pounds to about 20 or 30 pounds. And the reason it did that is because show us. This is what we found. A broken valve spring on his LS. Now, what that did was make it so when you're cranking it, the spring was strong enough to close the exhaust valve and get compression. But when it was running, the camshaft lifter would pump up and hold the exhaust valve open, and it couldn't run anymore. So we're going to do that here on the Barracuda with the compression gauge right here. And one thing I'm going to show you is okay, so there's a couple things about distributors. I've had a few people asking questions and stuff like that. Why can you advance the timing to 45 degrees while it's idling, but as soon as you hit the gas pedal, it pings like crazy? Well, also, how come we needed vacuum advance? Well, this is going to help to explain that. And what happens to the air fuel when you compress it harder? What happens to it?
When you compress it harder, it kind of excites the air in the fuel a lot more, and it tends to blow up more.
Blow up more?
Yeah, and it tends to blow up early when your piston's not always all the way up there.
Okay, well, that's all pretty much right on, but I was thinking it makes it burn faster.
Oh yeah.
So the higher the compression, the faster the burn. And that's why we put a higher octane fuel in there, because the higher octane fuel is more stable, which basically slows the burn down and allows the burn to finish when the piston is over TDC or past TDC. And so when you're driving down the highway and your engine's under a lot of vacuum because the carburetor is shut, that does not allow a ton of air into the cylinder, and when we don't let air in, we don't squeeze anything.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to show that. This is going to show that what that compression looks like when the carburetor is closed, and then we'll snap the throttle open and you can watch and see what happens. And when you're cruising down the highway, and we may do this someday, Jacob, just for fun, we may take this hose here and extend it all the way into the car. And all we got to do is just do a couple of quick disconnects, and then while we're driving down the road, we'll be able to see what the compression is, and then we'll nail the throttle, and you can see what happens to the compression. So when we're going down the highway and you got very low compression, that is what's going to tell us more advance. Well, that's what the vacuum advance does. And you stand on the gas, the vacuum in the manifold goes down, the distributor unadvances with the thing, and we're hoping that it totals out at what our compression and the fuel we're running is at to get a complete burn, right time, correct time to make the most power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so enough being silly. Let's pull this air cleaner off here so we can hear what this monster Holley sounds like when you nail the throttle on it. And why don't you go ahead and go in there and crank this bad boy up.
All right.
We'll set that down there. Okay, so it's going to have good compression at first. Anyway, go ahead and fire it up. All right, so while you're cranking it, it got up to 120 pounds. Okay, now I'm going to release this, and that's what we're idling at. Just under 50 pounds compression. And that's why you can set your timing real high without it pinging or doing something silly at an idle. But when you go to crank it, the engine's turning so slow, plenty of air gets into the cylinder, making enough compression that it kicks the engine backwards, and that's why we can't start it when the engine's warmed up and hot with a super high timing. Now, right now we're running on 5 cylinders, of course, okay? So, I'll let this out again. Now you hold this. Now I'm going to snap the throttle open. All right. So when we snap the throttle open, the compression goes real high. What happens to the fuel when the compression goes higher?
It wants to burn more.
Faster.
It wants to burn faster.
Okay? And that's why we have to reduce the timing with our vacuum advance back down to our mechanical advance. And the reason we can't start our engine good when we're at full advance like a lockout distributor is because when we crank the engine, we fill the cylinder up pretty good, making good compression, and it tries to kick that engine backwards. Okay? Why don't you go ahead and turn it off?
Alright, we're good.
Okay. Alright, so here's our leakage tester, and it's plugged in just like a compression gauge would be plugged in. And what we're going to do first is we're going to plug our hose in. Now we have a little bitty compressor over here, and this probably isn't going to be enough to do what we need to do. Let me do a couple other things. If you're going to do a leakage test, our engine needs to be fully heated. Our engine needs to be at TDC, and I mean 0. If you have it at a couple of degrees one way or the other, as soon as we put the air to it, it's going to turn the engine, just like combustion, because we're putting pressure in the cylinder. Okay? Now, when the piston's at the bottom, we don't need to hold any pressure in. By the time the piston gets to the bottom in this engine, the exhaust valve is already open. So where those rings are at, we don't, the condition at that point of the cylinder doesn't affect us. We need it at the top to see what the condition of our seal is. Okay. I don't know whether we're on TDC or not. We'll check that in a minute. But anyway, so what we do is we take our hose, we plug it in. And can you see it from there, Jacob? Yep. I want to kind of leave it so the camera can see it too. We got our regulator, and we're going to adjust this around. Oh, take this off. Don't leave it on. We're going to adjust this around. You see how both gauges are going up at the same time?
Yep.
And when this gauge gets to 0,
that means it's set.
Okay. Notice how it's right about 100 pounds. Yep. So it's reasonable to think that if we're at 50 pounds, we got 50% leakage, because every pound is a percent. That's not totally accurate. We'll let the gauge decide all that stuff. Anyway, that's how you set it. Now we're going to take our thing here and plug it in. Okay, now what is it showing us? 100% leakage?
Nope, probably about, that's 80, that's 90, probably about 95% leakage.
So we have no compression ability in there whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, there's a reason. And this tool helps you find this. If you have low compression, back to it here. So you can put air to this cylinder when you're on TDC, and if your intake valve is leaking, if you take that air cleaner off, you'll hear the air go shh, and that'll tell you got a bad intake valve. Something's stuck, something is wrong. Or you can go back to the tailpipe and you hear it go shh out of the exhaust. You know what that tells you? Maybe a bad exhaust valve. But if you pull this off and you hear it in here, You know what that tells you is wrong?
What?
How would air get down in here from our cylinder?
How the air? Oh, the air is leaking past the piston and going through
Through the crankcase up into our rocker box. Okay, you got it.
through the crankcase.
Okay. So now when I just plugged this in, we had 0. We had 90-something% leakage. That's because our intake valve is open because I could hear it leaking through the air cleaner. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to rotate the engine. Well, here's what I'm going to have you do. I'm going to have you tap the engine until I feel it go okay. That'll be coming up on TDC, and then we'll go down there to our timing mark and we'll set it to exact 0. So go in there and tap that start. Just tap it.
Alright, so you just go.
Yep. And then I'll tell you go, and you do it again, and I'll tell you go, and you do it again.
Alright.
Again. 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 Okay, that was actually too far. Go again. Again.
I started the engine.
Okay, go again. Again. Okay, that's good right there. Go ahead and pause the camera for now until we get this done. The camera. Okay, now that we got that thing up on TDC, we tried to turn it by hand to get it to TDC and tore the fan belt up trying to turn it. Jacob grabbed it and smacked my knuckles into the radiator. Grab that belt over there so we can show the folks, the peeps.
Yep. Here you go.
So here's a belt that's maybe 2 years old, and I put pressure on it and grabbed the fan and pulled on it and went snap, trying to get it to TDC, and I punched the radiator.
You punched
now,
the radiator.
Jake,
Bad.
Jacob and I worked on it by tapping it over and getting it up to TDC, so now we're finally ready to go, and let's see where we're at. Oh boy, we're in racing mode. Look at that. It's slowly falling off because our compressor is weak, but we're right in that 10% range, which we like a whole bunch. The compressor is going to start up in a second, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. Okay, so this is cylinder number 6. It's our lowest compression cylinder, and that tells us with that kind of leakage that our valves are okay, that our rings are good, both intake, exhaust. Now, if one of the valves was bad, as soon as we put the pressure to it, you would hear it coming out the air cleaner if it was intake valve. If it was exhaust valve, you'd hear it at the tailpipe. If it was piston rings, you'd hear it through your valve cover. So why do we have different compression in this engine? Well, it's because of mass production. And on mass production engines, the pistons are all mass made, put into machines. If the machines are off at all, wrist pin in a different location, top of the piston cut off too far, making the deck height different so that the piston doesn't come all the way to the top like the rest of them, that'll do it. But more than likely the pistons are okay. More than likely it's the combustion chambers in the cylinder head, and they're supposed to be a certain size. And in this case, we had higher compression in number 1, and it slowly went downhill to number 6. So there's a chance that this head may have been surfaced at one time, or is been surfaced by the factory crooked. So cut more on number 1 cylinder than number 6 would make the combustion chamber slightly smaller, and that would bring the compression higher. So there's a possibility of that. But when we do an engine, those are some of the things we check when we're doing blueprinting or racing. And then what we do is go through every one of them. We find the biggest or the smallest chamber. The biggest chamber. and then we grind out the other chambers until we get them to the exact amount. Now, if you're running a class in racing where you're not allowed to do that, then you might sink an exhaust valve a little deeper or do something like that to add cc's to the combustion chamber. But anyway, that's what we do, and then that would make it so our compression should most likely be even across the board. Now, we didn't do that to the Slant 6 because this is a grocery getter, and we don't care. It has a 1-barrel Holley on it and points ignition in it. We're not superly overly concerned about that kind of stuff. If I ever do a race engine, a Slant 6 race engine, we will do that. But it's going to have electronic ignition in it or something like that also. There's several different things that we would do differently if it wasn't just a grocery getter. So grocery getters are typically very budget-minded builds. That's exactly what this was. Get it going down the road. It's never going to be fast. It's a 225 Slant 6. It runs good. I have currently gotten as high as 26 miles to the gallon out of this car. And I've only heard of a couple other people with Slants getting that good of economy. All right, now Jacob, did you have fun using the tools?
Yes, I did.
Now it makes it for a fun day. I love using the tools. I love stuff like this. And so when I get a new tool, I get excited about using it. Whenever I have an opportunity, when I'm working on somebody's car or something, and the opportunity is to use one of these gauges, I can't wait to get there and do it and have fun with it. So anyway, this is a kind of a learning video, and I hope it helps. Any questions down below? What else, everybody? Have a good day.
Like and subscribe.
Right on.